In this video, I'll give you some tips for the ALEKS problem called distinguishing a metal from a nonmetal by physical properties. In this problem, you're going to have a description of an element, and your job is to decide if the description applies to either a metal or a nonmetal. There are going to be some situations where you're not going to be able to tell based on the description, so you're going to want to check can't decide. So let's talk a little bit about what you're looking for to classify something as a metal. Metals, all of them except for mercury, are solids. So for the most part, and actually in a lot of the versions of this problem, they are just describing solids. So it's not super helpful. I do want to point out that nonmetals, some nonmetals are also solids. So just because an object is a solid doesn't automatically mean that it's a metal. Metals are good conductors of both heat and electricity, and that's something that comes up in quite a few of the versions of this ALEKS problem. I can't write that word and talk at the same time. Good conductor of heat and electricity. So there are several problems or several descriptions in ALEKS problems where they're talking about the substance conducting heat and also talking about the substance conducting electricity. Metals are substances that are not brittle, meaning that if you hit them or smash them, they don't crumble into pieces. They flatten out or they stretch out or they just kind of become deformed, but they don't break apart. So these are just some of the general things that we're going to look for when we're trying to identify each one of these elements. So this one says we have a solid. That means it could possibly be a metal. It says that this thing can be flexed slightly by hand. So that would mean that it is not brittle. Flexing it slightly by hand means that the person is holding it in their hand and just kind of bending it. It is flexing, putting a slight bend in the middle, not snapping, not breaking. I think that describes a metal. And I'm going to highlight that it bends when somebody bends instead of breaks. That's the word I'm looking for. So element number 2, it says that it also is a solid. It's put into a hydraulic press and it is squeezed. And after it's done being squeezed, the surface has become lighter, its shape has changed, but most importantly, it didn't break. It just kind of mushed into a different shape. That is a characteristic of a metal. So I would say that all of this right here is the parts that make me think that this is a metal. Element number 3 says that wires are connected to the sample. It's plugged into a battery. It's hooked up so that it can feed electricity through an LED light, but the LED stays dark. That means it is not conducting electricity, which would mean that it is a nonmetal. It's non-conductive. I have seen some of these conductivity ones where it says it connects it to some sort of power source, like maybe it connects it to a 9-volt battery, and it causes the sample to smoke or like catch on fire or change different colors or something like that. That would be a nonmetal. So something that smokes or gets discolored by electricity, that means it's not conducting the electricity. That means that the electricity is reacting with it or causing some sort of chemical reaction to take place. I think I spelled electricity wrong. I'm sure somebody will let me know if I did. And I think that the other situation that I haven't talked specifically about is if the object is melted. Right, so this the other scenario that I see coming up in here is that it's talking about taking this object, putting it into some kind of little container and heating it up and melting it. So if you see a description where something is being melted, we can't really tell from melting. Metals melt and nonmetals also melt. So if you get like, oh, this is an object that is melting, just go with can't decide, because everything is possible. Everything is capable of melting.